One of the most beloved roots reggae harmony trios, if not exactly prolific in the heyday of the late 1970s, was Israel Vibration. Their plaintive three-part harmonies expressing themes of resilience, perseverance, and above all, faith. Their story is one of triumph over adversity. Stay tuned.
Greetings, name of Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I the First, Jah Rastafari. Yeah, yeah, I just strength of fire in my life.
The members of Israel Vibration, Lascelle, Weiss, Bulgin, Cecil, Skeleton or Skelly, Spence, and Albert Apple Craig all met for the first time as children. Their lives had started out marked by tragedy at a very young age. All three were afflicted by polio during an epidemic that swept Jamaica in the 1950s. All three lost the use of their legs, would have to rely on crutches and canes to walk about for the rest of their lives. They'd first met as children at a facility called the Mona Rehabilitation Center in Kingston, Jamaica, set up to treat children whose families could not afford medical care. In the ensuing years, their lives would go in different directions. Lascelle Bulgin Weiss was training as a tailor. Albert Craig had gone on to the famed Alpha Boys School, renowned for its music program, while Spence was in a band called the Hot Lickers, even appearing on Jamaican TV with them, and was on the Jamaican wheelchair basketball team. However, all three would sight up Rastafari at a very young age. Late 1960s, early 1970s, would begin experience persecution due to the outward manifestations of their faith, the growing of dreadlocks, the use of ganja. Spence was kicked off the wheelchair basketball team. Bulgin, meanwhile, was suddenly unceremoniously fired from his job as a tailor. Craig, meanwhile, had dropped out of the Alpha Boys School, unable to deal with the rigorous discipline enforced there. They would reconnect in their teens. All three ended up living rough in a bushy area on the outskirts of Kingston, sleeping in the outdoors. They found a space where they could exist. They were busking on the streets for spare change, trying to survive, trying to eke out a meager living. And as they reconnected, they decided to form a roots harmony group and began working on their harmonies, developing a plaintive three-part blend of their voices, with Spence often taking lead, which seemed to sway in time to the motion of their movements as they walk on crutches, as they sway to the music. They began perfecting their harmonies, but they endured a very tough existence on the streets of Kingston, busking, trying to get by on what little food they could find. Finally, they linked up with Rasta organization, the 12 Tribes of Israel. Bob Marley was also affiliated at this time. In 1975, with support and aid from the 12 Tribes of Israel, under production by a member called Hugh Booth, they recorded a song called Bad Intention at Channel 1 Studio. This is a reissue from a few years ago on Jah Love Music. Jah Love Music, the official sound system of the 12 Tribes of Israel. The song, however, was not released commercially at the time. The following year, 1976, again with aid and support from the 12 Tribes of Israel, they would record a second single, Why Worry? It's again a reissue on the Orthodox label. This did appear on Orthodox originally, circa 1976. Orthodox, an official label of the 12 Tribes of Israel Rasta organization devoted to strictly righteous music. The song expressing the themes that would become so predominant in Israel Vibration's music of resilience, of resistance against oppression, themes that the members had all experienced in their day-to-day lives trying to survive. This song would finally get them notice, and from here on, Israel Vibration's fortunes would start to rise.
I can pray. I scratch my nuts, and then I say, and then I say, and then I say, it's the way. Why worry? When you can pray. See, Lascelle, as he leads the way.
The success of their first released single, the jaunty, Skelly-penned Why Worry, was a defining point in the group's career after enduring years of poverty, homelessness, of struggling to eke out an existence on the streets of Kingston with the limitations of their physical handicaps. The song caught the attention of well-connected producer and promoter Tommy Cowan, a former singer with the Jamaicans Harmony Group, who had scored a huge hit a few years before with the festival song Baba Boom Time. He had since moved into production through his Talent Corporation umbrella of acts and took Israel Vibration under his wing. They began opening for high-profile artists such as Inner Circle, also associated with Cowan, as well as Bob Marley and others. He would re-record Why Worry over again in a new version with more prominent organ lead, as well as the first version of the song that would be forever identified with Israel Vibration, the anthemic The Same Song, providing the title track of their debut LP, produced by Cowan. The Same Song itself is a plea for common purpose, one aim, one destiny among the various houses of Rastafari. Whether you're a Bobo, whether you're an Orthodox, whether you're a 12 Tribes of Israel, we all gonna sing the same song, we all gonna jam the same jam. Though in a larger sense, it can be seen as a general plea for unity. Elsewhere, the song's entirely concerned with righteousness, with the eventual biblical judgment on the unrighteous, the wicked. Walk the streets of glory, almost conversational or testimonial-like, as the lead singer sounds as if he's speaking directly to the listener, likening the situation in Jamaica at that point to that of Israel needing to be delivered out of bondage in Egypt. I'll go through a simple song of faith commenting on the reports of the death, the physical death of Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie. Every day them run up them big mouth, tell dreads say, your God has gone away, and sing to hold firm to faith in Rastafari. Lift up your conscience, never mind with the violence, prophet has arise, Jah time has come, entirely righteous, hymn-like music, utterly sincere as their harmonies mesh with the rhythms, licks and kicks, sounding as if it's detailing a true incident of physical oppression, persecution, the beatings that would be heaped upon the Rastafari brethren by authorities at this time. The album would be released in Jamaica on Tommy Cowan's top ranking label. The back cover detailing or making clear the group's affiliation with the 12 Tribes of Israel, Weiss, Tribe of Dan, Skeleton, Tribe of Gad, Apple, Tribe of Reuben. Israel Vibration, very much a part of the 12 Tribes of Israel organization at this time. The album would be picked up for overseas release by EMI and its Harvest imprint, leading to wide distribution and instant classic status. This album can be considered an essential roots reggae album. Also released in 1978 was a dub version of the same song album, very similar sleeve with just dub versions labeled over top. Back cover the same, and this would also appear on the top ranking label in Jamaica. Very rare dub album. Not a single copy of this for sale on Discogs right now. For this one, I had to visit my friend Mark over in the background there to show this from his collection, the same song dub. This would also appear in an alternative form the same year as the Israel Tafari album with a different cover and credited to Fat Man Rhythm section. Also features 2 less tracks than this version and reportedly a different mix. Haven't heard it myself, but very rare dub album, the same song in dub.
We all gonna sing the same song.
In 1980, a second Tommy Cowan produced LP would appear from Israel Vibration titled Unconquered People. This copy on the Generation label out of Canada. This would follow much the same lyrical themes as their debut, with lead-off song Give I Grace, a prayer for faith to get through life's trials and tribulations, a subject the group knew well. We Adi Rasta, a statement of identity, of purpose. The title track itself, Defiance Against the Odds. This would be recorded at Tough Gong Studios, then still Bob Marley's home, with members of the Wailers on board, including the rhythm section of Aston Barrett on bass, his brother Carlton on drums, as well as Tyrone Downey and Waya Lindo on keys, as well as Dean Fraser again on sax, and Mikey Chung again on guitar. Would be another worthy follow-up to the same song, nearly reaching the quality of that debut. Israel Vibration, while not as prolific as some other harmony groups of the time, not releasing a slew of 45s on various labels for different producers, but what they did release, while small in quantity, high in quality. This would be followed by a full-length dub version, simply titled Unconquered People Dub. This is a reissue from several years ago, mixed by Errol Brown. Dub versions of all the songs on Unconquered People. By the early 1980s, especially after the passing of Bob Marley, the sound of reggae was starting to shift from the roots reggae of the late 1970s that Israel Vibration had been associated with into the early dancehall sound. The group would split with producer Tommy Cowan and decamp to the auspices of Henry Junjo Laws, who was capturing the sound of the moment in the early 1980s with a slew of new up-and-coming artists, as well as revitalizing the careers of long-standing artists, and Israel Vibration were hoping much the same formula would apply to them. The Why You So Craven LP, their third, would appear in 1983, produced by Junjo Laws. The title track reportedly a diss to first producer Tommy Cowan. But apparently these sessions were marked by creative disagreements with Junjo Laws, reportedly left unfinished, though of a fairly high standard, if not quite up to the quality of the debut. Following this, finding themselves unable to come to grips with the changes in the sound of reggae music, the more hedonistic, perhaps, sound of early dancehall, and also seeking access to better medical care, the group would move to the US, to the New York area. They would begin attempting to develop solo careers, which did not lead to much, and finally would call it a day in the early 1980s, would separate. In the mid-1980s, Weiss would release a solo album recorded in the US called Mr. Sunshine. This is a very recent reissue from the DKR label out of Brooklyn. This would appear on Hyman Wright's Jaw Life label in the US. But the story of Israel Vibration was not done yet. In the late 1980s, the story of Israel Vibration had seemed to be over, but an unexpected second act would occur when they linked up with Gary Dr. Dread Himmelfarb, owner of the US-based RAS Records label. They would reform and begin recording for RAS Records, beginning with the album Strength of My Life in 1988, marking their reunion. This would also see them backed by the Roots Radix Band, which had been highly associated with Henry Junjo Laws in Jamaica in the early 1980s. This would begin a long-standing association between the Radix and Israel Vibration, as well as a regular series of albums appearing on RAS Records through the 1980s, such as IV Dub in 1994, RAS Records, further dub set from the group, Free to Move, 1995. These were all well-regarded, brand new releases by the reunited trio, released in the US through RAS Records, and 1996's On the Rocks. High-quality albums by Israel Vibration. However, in 1997, after years of regular touring, usually backed live by the Roots Radix Band, Albert Craig would leave the group for a solo career, releasing the Another Moses album in 1999. The duo of Weiss and Skelly would continue on as Israel Vibration. I saw them live myself once. Israel Vibration. Unfortunately, wasn't the best opportunity to see them. They were on a part of a huge package. They were mid-level act, unfortunately relegated to a 15 or 20 minute set in the middle of the afternoon, but it was the duo of Weiss and Skelly swaying on stage with their crutches and backed by the Roots Radix Band. Only time they appeared in my area, to the best of my knowledge. They would continue on touring, recording further albums as Israel Vibration. Apple would pass away in 2020 after many years apart from the group. Weiss and Skelly, meanwhile, continuing 2022. They had just completed a a tour date of the West Coast, Israel Vibration, long-standing and very devoted fan base, particularly on the West Coast of the US. Unfortunately, Skelly fell ill, was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of cancer, which was untreatable, and he passed away August 26, 2022, bringing a final end to the story of Israel Vibration, one of the most beloved and revered roots harmony trios. Thank you for watching, guys. Take care.